Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of SEC Live. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Today, filling in for Tyler, we have a special guest, Chris at SG1 Sports here on YouTube. How are you doing today, Chris?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. It obviously is a big rivalry week for Texas. A lot of other big games, even outside the SEC, Ohio State and Oregon, but obviously sticking to the SEC here. But again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build here. Share it out with your friends, family, neighbor, wherever you want to do that, or share it too. Please do that. And then also, there's an Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process. Click on it, shop with it, puts a little bit of change in Mark's pocket. It's actually Prime Day today and tomorrow, so you're saving money and also helping Mark, so please do that. If you don't want to watch us, but you want to listen to us, go over to Spotify, go over to Apple, go over to Amazon, and listen to us there on your favorite audio platform. Just type in the Voice of College Football, and then find the SEC channel, find the Texas channel, find the Oklahoma channel, whatever your team is. Or if you're not in the SC and you're just here joining us for today, please, again, hit that like and subscribe button, but go find your favorite channel over there. We probably have it. We have a bunch. So it was a busy week in the SEC. Obviously, a lot of different a lot of upsets. Arkansas beating Tennessee, Vanderbilt beating Alabama. So busy week, fun week. And we discussed this, Chris. There was a team that stood out to both of us, and then you look at their schedule, and we think they could get to Atlanta, and that is the Texas A&M Aggies. Honestly, am I surprised they beat Missouri? Absolutely not. I thought Missouri and LSU were the two most overrated teams, but the way they did it in dismantling Missouri was quite impressive. It was also very impressive for Mike Elko to put in Connor Wegman. He did not have to do that. Marcel Reese was undefeated as a starter, and honestly, that took a lot of guts and courage for Mike Elko to do that, because if it goes wrong, he's going to get a lot of blame. What did you think of that game?
I thought Texas A&M would win fairly easily, but yeah, I didn't expect that kind of beat down. And I'm actually higher on Connor Wigman, so I thought he was the right decision. I think that they have a higher ceiling with him, better passer, and I'm pretty high on Texas A&M. And you look at the schedule, like you said, it sets up pretty well.
Yeah, it definitely does. I completely agree about Connor Wegman being a better passer. I just thought Marcel Reese fits in this offense a little bit better. Colin Klein likes to run. If you watch Colin Klein at Kansas State, he likes to run the same type of offense he was playing in at Kansas State. A lot of running of the quarterback, beating you with the angles in the run game, and then eventually hitting you vertically. But Connor Wegman, to me, I like him. I don't love him. You see the talent that he had last year in the Miami game. You saw it this year versus Missouri, but everything else in between has been okay. It's not been great. But again, when we look at the schedule, it's not very hard. They are on a bye week this week. Then you play Mississippi State at home. You play LSU at home. You play on the road at South Carolina, which I think will be a tough game just because of the environment. Then you have a bye week. You play New Mexico State. You're at Auburn, and then you play Texas. This might be the second easiest schedule in the SEC behind Missouri. I think Missouri's got the easiest. I mean, basically, to me, on this schedule, I think LSU, because of their schedule, also is going to contend for the SEC championship. Obviously, Texas is going to contend for the SEC championship. If you can go 1-1 in those games and then win every other game, you're going to be in Atlanta. What are some other pitfalls that I'm not seeing on the schedule that you see, Chris?
Well, I'll tell you what, as crazy as this season has been, could they even lose 2 games? I mean, I think they could lose 2 games and possibly again. You might be looking at some tiebreaker scenarios. The Auburn game, don't want to sound biased here, but that could be a little bit tricky right before Texas on the road. I know everybody thinks, Auburn's terrible, but if you look at how they've played and the disasters they've had, there's still a lot of talent there. So that one is a little tricky, but yeah, getting Texas at home, LSU at home, that's huge. Like you said, South Carolina is going to be tough on the road, but I think Texas A&M is a much better team than South Carolina. Sure, they could lose that game, but yeah, I look at South Carolina and Auburn on the road, maybe a slip up there. Kyle Field's a tough place to play. LSU coming in there, I would favor Texas A&M there as well. So I think there's a very good chance that they go 10-2, just the one loss in the SEC. And yeah, we could definitely see potentially Texas A&M in a rematch the week after they play in the regular season. That's kind of the way I'm leaning right now. Especially I felt like Alabama was kind of in the driver's seat, but losing to Vanderbilt, and then you've got LSU on the road, you've got Tennessee on the road, you got Oklahoma, even the Iron Bowl. You never know. It's going to be a tough road for them. So yeah, we could definitely see Texas A&M 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think one, you're in the SEC championship game if they only lose one of these games. If they lose two, I don't know the tiebreaker scenarios, because there's going to be tiebreaker scenarios at that point. And it's going to be very interesting how that plays out with teams they're not even going to play on their schedule. Like, it could be Georgia or Alabama that they don't play on the schedule. And then I believe it goes like conference record wise and then opponent record. It's so crazy how deep they could go in the tiebreakers. And you could have like 2 or 3 teams, honestly, for that tiebreaker in that second spot in Atlanta. So it's going to be very interesting. And those ticket prices, I don't know if you guys saw this. I saw it on Twitter today for Texas A&M. The get-in price, the cheapest ticket just to stand, is $550. If that is for the SEC championship game, the get-in ticket price will be $800+, which is insane to think about. And it's actually right now, I saw another graphic. It's more money to go to Texas and Texas A&M right now currently than it was to get in the Super Bowl last year. So, wow. I mean, the fans want this rivalry back clearly, and it's going to be, I've said this for a while as a Texas fan, it's going to be the most hostile environment any team walks into this year. I don't care who it is. You can say Michigan going to Ohio State, that's not going to be as hostile. Ohio State even going to Oregon this week, not going to be as hostile. Texas A&M fans despise and hate Texas fans. And there's definitely a lack of respect between the two fan bases. There's more respect between Oklahoma and Texas fans than there are between Texas A&M and Texas fans. And I agree with you. I mean, I don't want to play them twice in a row, but it's looking like that. If Texas can hold up their end of the bargain, if they win this week versus Oklahoma and then win next week versus Georgia, I think it's pretty damn likely at that point that you're going to see Texas A&M and Texas in back-to-back weeks, which is crazy to say. I would not have said that at the beginning of the year, but it's been a crazy season so far. Let's jump into your comments real quick. SG1 Sports, what's up, man? From Weston Long. Texas A&M, Darrell said Texas A&M is a contender because everyone else has fallen off. I agree with that to an extent, but it's also number one for me is the schedule. I think, Chris, you would agree with that as well, right?
Yeah, I had them losing to Arkansas, and they've already passed that test, beat Missouri, and I think we probably would both agree that Texas A&M will go into the Texas game with, if they win that game, I think they'll be in regardless. I think they'll go into that game max 1 loss. So, I mean, that you talked about that game. That game is going to be huge, especially for them. Texas might be in either way, but Texas A&M, I think they're going to go into that game win and you're in.
Yeah, and that's what's funny. People have brought up whether or not, like, would a team kind of like rest their players their last week if they already know they're in the SEC championship, Big Ten championship, stuff like that. We talked about with Ohio State and Michigan. Texas is not resting their players. They are going to want to beat Texas A&M to kick them out of the SEC championship game. So no matter what, you're going to get a phenomenal game, a really good atmosphere, and that would never happen. Jackson asked, where is Tyler tonight? Tyler is moving. Tyler will be back next week, but Tyler is moving. I don't think
got
Texas.
Pick, so
yeah, he does have his.
I'm going to get his pick.
I need to add those up after this week. I keep forgetting to do that. He's killing me at this point in the SEC. I'm so bad so far at picking the SEC games. I'm good at literally picking everything else. Like if I go through my bets on my app, most of my losses are SEC. I'm not good at betting it. I don't know why. And guys, I already said this on the tech show. I am sticking to my notebook of preseason predictions because they have been way more right than my in-season predictions. My in-season predictions have not been good when it comes to the SEC. So whatever my preseason prediction says, I am going with from here on out. Darrell says
we overreact.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's usually I don't, and I don't know why I'm doing it with the SEC, but maybe I am. So I'm just sticking with that for now. I don't care what it says. Like, for example, this is how dumb I am. I bet on Missouri in the preseason, and this doesn't make any sense. I've said Missouri and LSU were the two most overrated teams. I had Missouri losing to Texas A&M in my preseason predictions, but me being my dumb self, you know what? Let's pick Missouri. And obviously that didn't work out. So that's why I'm sticking with my preseason predictions. Auburn is a good team when they don't turn the ball over. Chris, I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton Thorne, I mean, he was so good in that Oklahoma game. And then that pick six sealed the deal, and it was not a good throw. I also put a lot of that on Hugh Freeze because I don't know why you're throwing in that situation anyways. I think that just should have been a run, especially the way that game was, where both those offenses, honestly, are pretty challenged, and it was low scoring. I didn't understand that, but it is what it
Yeah, it
is.
seems like Peyton Thorne and Hugh Freeze have not been on the same page at times. There was the 4th and 1 against Georgia. Hugh Freeze basically said that Peyton Thorne did not do the right play when he kept it there. I mean, they probably weren't going to win that game anyways, but the game was still kind of on the line, 4th and 1. He was supposed to hand it off. He kept it. Like, it seems like there's just always something. There's always something getting in the way.
Yeah, and he also today I saw Peyton Thorne. He's on that Around the Table sports show or talk show or whatever, and basically called out Hugh Freeze. He didn't call him a liar. He didn't say Hugh Freeze are a liar, but he basically said that's not what happened. And there's definitely something going on there. I don't know if they really like each other at this point, but they're gonna have to deal with each other for at least a couple more games next year. It won't matter because there will be another new quarterback there. Darrell, does it bother you that Texas versus Oklahoma is at 3:30? No, I like it better. I hated the noon kickoff. A lot of Texas fans want a night kickoff. I think that'd be insane at the State Fair at night. But apparently it's not a safe area. People have said that, which I think is stupid. I mean, Baton Rouge late at night is probably not much safer than Dallas in that area at night. So I don't understand that argument. But I don't care. I actually, if you're ranking me of what time I wanted to kick off, I would go night, 3:30 noon. I hated the noon kickoff. I thought it was stupid. I never really liked it. But I might be in the minority on that. It's very split all across the board. I think everyone does want a night game at least one time, though. So it's going to be interesting. So Florida beat UCF last week. Arkansas beats Tennessee. I'm bringing up the question, did Billy Napier and Sam Pittman save their jobs? And how long have they saved their jobs for? Chris, I'll let you start off on this one.
Yeah, well, they saved their jobs for this week, right?
Yeah.
At least for one more week. Have they saved them for the season? That's tough. How are things going to play out? I don't think there's much hope for Billy Napier. I really don't. Sam Pittman, I think there's more hope. You look at Florida and you look at what they've got coming up. I mean, it's just brutal. It's at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, at Florida State. Kentucky's at home. You look at that as a possible win. Florida State's a disaster. You look at that as a possible win. Can they get to 6-6? Can they pull off an upset somewhere? You have to figure with this schedule, 6-6, maybe that's enough to keep his job. It's hard to say right now. And how competitive are they in these games? If Tennessee beats them by 30, is that going to be it? Is it over? So I think that's kind of what I'm thinking is if he can get to 6-6, if he can pull off a big win somewhere, maybe he saves his job. 5-7, I think he's probably done. Even though preseason, if you looked at the schedule, 5-7, really, that's not horrible with the schedule. But I think Sam Pittman's in a little bit better shape. I think he's probably going to be safe, and one of the things about Arkansas is if they fire him, who do they hire? Who's going to go to Arkansas? I don't know who they can get, but they've got wins still on the schedule. They've got Mississippi State. That's a very winnable game. They still got Louisiana Tech. And that's enough to get them to a bowl game right there. So I think Sam Pittman's going to be safe. Billy Napier, probably not, but we'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, so I completely agree. And actually, yeah, if they go 5-7 for Florida, they've overperformed what Vegas thought. Vegas had them at 4.5 wins. I actually bet the over on that, so I'm hoping they do get the 5-7. Yeah, I think Billy Napier's opportunity, honestly, was earlier in the year. I think if he beat Texas A&M or just split between Miami and Texas A&M, and he's at 4 right now, and then he wins 2 more games, then we're talking about a 6-win team. I think 6 would have kept him, but I don't even know if they're going to get to 5. I mean, at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. I mean, Florida State, Tennessee, and then I think either Ole Miss or LSU. You're not winning both of those games, but those are your three most likely possibilities for a win to get you to 6. I just don't see it happening. And I'm going to bring up this stat again. Florida has not had 3 straight losing seasons since 1945, 1946, and 1947. If they have a losing season this year, that is 3 years in a row. Billy Napier has to be fired at that point. I don't understand why you would keep him. There's recruiting isn't as good this year as it usually is under him either. And that's another telltale sign. And ADs definitely look at that and say, it's time to get him out of there. Another thing I thought of today, because it brought it up with Robert Saleh of the Jets getting fired, Aaron Rodgers called for that firing. It was pretty clear. We are going to get to a point in the NIL era where a big name NIL guy does not like the head coach, and he is going to say, it is me or it is the head coach, choose, and someone's going to have to make a decision. Does DJ Lagaway does he have any positive or negative feelings on Billy Napier? Is he neutral on Billy Napier? That would be a question I'd be asking if I'm a Florida fan. If he hates Billy Napier, then this makes the decision pretty easy. If he loves Billy Napier, I still think the decision's pretty hard. If he's neutral, I still think you fire him. I think the only way at this point Billy Napier's job is completely safe is if he can get to 5 or 6 wins and DJ Lagway's like, this is my guy. If you fire him, I'm leaving. If it's not that, then he's gone. Now on Sam Pittman, the problem, I agree with you. I don't know who they're going to get. Right now, the names that came to my head are Jeff Traylor at UTSA. I think that would be a decent hire. And then I believe GJ Kinney or whatever. I always forget his first name, but Kinney at Texas State. I think that would also be a good hire. I don't know if either of them are super interested in that job. I don't know if they're more interested in the Baylor job, which I don't understand why you would be. I think they'd take the Arkansas job. But I will say this. Sam Pittman, to me, is only as good as his coordinators. We saw that in 2021. They went 9-4. His coordinators were Kendall Briles and Barry Odom. Both pretty good coordinators. Barry Odom's doing a pretty damn good job at UNLV right now. They have at coordinator Bobby Petrino and Travis Williams. This team's probably going to win 8 or 9 games again. If I'm Sam Pittman and I'm in this for the long haul, I am going to the athletic department and saying, I will take less money on a year-to-year basis if that money goes straight to the coordinators, because that is the only way this works. Sam Pittman is not a good enough head coach for him to have average or below average coordinators. He has to have really good coordinators on both sides of the football. Otherwise, this doesn't work. You see this all the time with coaches. Once their coordinators, their first staff hires leave, they go downhill. And I think that's the case with Sam Pittman. Once those guys left, you saw him go downhill, and then he hired Bobby Petrino, and it got better. And Travis Williams was actually there last year as well, and you saw how they've improved on the defensive side of the ball. So to me, I think Billy Napier is gone. I think Sam Pittman is around if he wants to be. But that's my opinion on that. Billy has no hope. Billy has only beaten horrible teams and got crushed by everyone else. I kind of agree with that. I don't really see at this point how Billy Napier sticks around. He beats the teams he should, and then like you know what kind of reminds me of as a Texas fan? It's Charlie Strong. Charlie Strong barely beat the teams he should, and then got absolutely demolished by good football teams. And that's kind of what's happening at Florida. It's going to be interesting this week versus Tennessee. I think Tennessee's not as good as we all thought, and it'll be interesting. I know they're on the road, but I think it'll be a somewhat competitive game because it is a rivalry, and Florida, for whatever reason, throughout the history, has owned it, even though Tennessee has had some good years. Obviously, I'm a huge Peyton Manning fan, and Peyton Manning couldn't beat Florida his whole time there, and they were damn good then. So we'll see what happens in that game. The only positive for Florida fan is that they aren't FSU fans. Yeah, that's going to be an abysmal game at the end of the year. Florida State and Florida. I'm going to watch it. My eyeballs might fall out of my head watching it. And honestly, if Mike Norvell didn't get the contract extension he did last year, I think both those guys would probably be coaching for their job if Billy Napier even makes that far at the end of the year. Again, guys, can you please hit that like and subscribe button? It really helps out the channel. Share this out with your friends, family, and coworkers. Also, use the Amazon link in the description to shop. Does not change the buying experience or shopping experience. All it does is put a little bit of change in Mark's pocket. And if you don't want to watch us, but you want to listen to us, go to your favorite Apple our favorite podcasting site, whether that's Apple, Amazon, or Spotify. Look up the Voice of College Football. You will find it. And we are there. You can listen to us at any time in any or at your earliest convenience as well. Robert, good evening. Yeah, good evening to you too. SG1, is he one of your fans? Do you know? Because I have not
Maybe,
seen him
I don't
on
know.
here. Okay. Please, well, if you're new here, please subscribe. It really helps out. So we are going to jump into actual football games now. It is another week in the SEC, and we are going to start out with this game, SG1. It is going to be South Carolina at Alabama. South Carolina is getting 21 points here. We're going to jump into some statistics for you guys real quick before we get into it. South Carolina on offense is 55th in the country at 28 points per game. They average 4.9 yards per play, which is 94th in the country. Terrible. And it gets even worse. On third down, they're 117th in the country at 30% on offense. They average 4 yards per rush, which is 81st in the country. They average 7.5 yards per pass, which is 57th in the country. And they've gotten even worse after the Ole Miss game. QB sack percentage, which is the amount of sacks you give up. So 15.71% of dropbacks end in sacks. That is 15 sacks out of every 100 dropbacks. That is absolutely dead last in the whole entire country. They are terrible still along the offensive line. They were god-awful last year. I think they were either worst or second worst last year in all the country. They're not any better. On the defensive side of the ball, they are pretty good. 19 points per game, 23rd in the country. 4.4 yards per play, 13th in the country. 3.2 yards per carry, 16th in the country. Opponent yards per pass, 6.1, which is 22nd in the country. And they get after the quarterback on 8.98% of dropbacks. That is 14th in the country. They are very good on the defensive side of the ball. Now let's jump over to Alabama real quick. Alabama, 6th in the country, 44.6 points per game. 7.6 yards per play, 3rd in the country. Yards per rush, 5.5, 13th in the country. And I think Alabama fans were pretty angry at that Vanderbilt game because they did not run the ball enough in that game. Look at the time of possession. Look at the stats. They should have held on the ball a little bit more. Yards per pass is 11.1. That is 4th in the country. And their offensive line is actually a little bit better than I thought. They only allow a sack percentage of 6.06% of the time. That is 73rd. Not great, but it's better than I thought it was going to be. This is the downside of the Alabama team, the defense. 20th or 26th in points per game at 20 points per game, even 4.4 yards per play, which is 17th. 3.3 yards per rush, which is 21st, which isn't as bad as I thought. But then when we get to the passing, it is 5.8 yards per pass, which isn't that bad, which is 14th. But then the overall 207.6 yards per game, that is 50th. That is not an Alabama defense. And then 5.32% sack percentage. That is not getting after the quarterback. That is 78th in the country. SG1, what do you have to say about this game?
I think the biggest thing about this game is that this is going to be an angry Alabama team. I mean, and we've seen it before. What happens? I know Nick Saban's gone, but still, it's still Alabama. And when you've got a loss like they had, I just feel like they're going to come in really, really angry in this game. South Carolina, you talked about the numbers offensively. There's not a whole lot of a passing attack there. If they get into 3rd and long, you can just forget it. I mean, they're not going to convert, especially against a defense like Alabama. Yeah, the secondaries had some issues, but a lot of those stats probably came against Georgia in that second half when they just went off. The front seven's still really good, and if they slow down the run game for South Carolina, I just think South Carolina is going to have a hard time scoring much at all in this game. And even if South Carolina's defense can keep them in the game for a while, if they're going 3 and out, eventually the defense is going to wear down. Alabama's going to pull away. And I just don't see this game being close at all. I think Alabama wins big. Again, they come in angry. I think they do what they need to do on both sides of the ball. I think we're looking at about a 38-10 type game. I don't see it being close at all. Again, angry Alabama team, South Carolina team that is just not great offensively, and especially against a good defense. I think they're going to struggle. If you look at South Carolina, a lot of their points come from big plays on defense, turnovers, short fields, special teams, beamer ball. I just think Alabama's going to come into this game and they're not going to make a lot of mistakes, and they're going to be focused. They're going to be angry, like I said, and I think they roll in this one. And I do have Tyler's score. Let me see what he said about this one. Actually had a very similar score to me. He has it 34-10 Alabama. So just 4 points different there. That's his prediction, but I'm going 38-10.
Yeah, we're all kind of in the same ballpark. I have 37-13. So honestly, I think let me go back to the spread real quick before I answer DeReal's question. It is 21. So yes, we would all take Alabama here, and I would take the over as well. Or no, I would take the under by half a point. I honestly wouldn't touch the under if it's half a point there, but I guess if you're forcing me to, I would have to take the under. Yes, DeReal, I completely agree. Or if you're asking the question, I do think Alabama needs to get off to a fast start. And I will say this, I completely agree with you, Chris. This is the best game Alabama will play defensively all year. If it's not, that should be a huge concern going forward, because you're coming off getting embarrassed in the worst loss in at least 25 years for this Alabama program. Well, I take that back. They lost Louisiana Monroe, so 2007. But yeah, they have to come out to a fast start here. And what we just talked about, Alabama doesn't really get after the quarterback very well, honestly, what they're used to. Guess what? They don't have to. This South Carolina team are turnstiles. You can just run right by them. They are not good at defending Lenore Sellers. And that's a sad thing, too. I think Lenore Sellers is actually pretty good. I've been quite impressed with some of the things he's done. But the problem is he has zero time to throw the football. And to attack a bad secondary like Alabama's, or an average secondary, I don't think it's bad. I think it's average. You need time to throw the football. He's not going to have that. They're not going to be able to really run it either. They'll score some points because they have a good defense. I'm sure they'll force a turnover, maybe two, and they'll be able to score some points. But I just think they're going to get overwhelmed early in this game, and they're going to get blown out in the first half. I think it's going to be like 24-3 in the first half. I think Alabama's going to end up winning this game, like I said, 37-13, which puts it right at 50. So I wouldn't touch the over-under. Again, if you're forcing me to, I'm going under, and I'm taking the 21 points. I think Alabama covers this rather easily. If they do not cover this, guys, it's red flag time. It really is. It's red flag time to me, because South Carolina is challenged offensively, and you're coming, again, off one of your worst losses in program history. So this needs to be nut-cutting time, honestly, for this Alabama program. Next up, we will talk about, hey, DeReal, we're talking about your team. Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is getting 13.5 points on the road in Lexington here. Let's jump into some statistics. Vanderbilt is averaging 33.3 points per game. That is 29th in the country. They average 5.5 yards per play. That is 65th in the country. They have 3.5 yards per rush, which is way worse than I thought. That is 98th in the country. Yards per pass is 9.6, which is 10th in the country. And their offensive line is doing a decent job, and I think a lot of this has to do with Diego Pavia only allowing 5.1% of sacks per out of 100 attempts, which is 58th in the country. Now, the defensive side of the ball, not very good. 32 points per game allowed, 99th in the country. 6.1 yards per play, 102nd in the country. And then this is a big one, in my opinion, for this game. 4.3 yards per rush, 66th in the country allowing. Opponent yards per pass, 8.3, which is 102nd in the country. And their average at getting after the quarterback, 6.85% of dropbacks. And in a sack, that is 46th in the country. Now over to Kentucky. 22 points per game for Kentucky on offense, 91st in the country. 4.8 yards per play, which is 102nd in the country. Yards per rush is 3.7, 89th in the country. Yards per pass is 7.2, 67th in the country. And then this kind of surprised me. Kentucky's offensive line, 11.28% sack rate. That is 128th in the country, almost as bad as South Carolina's. Defensive side of the ball, only allow 13.4 points per game, 10th in the country, and that's really good seeing the schedule that they've had. 4.8 yards per play, 32nd in the country. 2.8 yards per rush, 9th in the country. 8 yards per pass, 87th in the country, so that is the weakness, but they do good after the quarterback pretty well. 8.77% of the dropbacks and into a sack. That is 15th in the country. So for me in this game, I think both these teams are similar. I just think Kentucky is just a way better version of what Vanderbilt is, honestly. And I think Kentucky's going to be able to strangle Vanderbilt in ways that Alabama wasn't to, because Kentucky straight up has a better defense than Alabama. I think Brock Vandagriff is going to be able to make timely plays in this game. And I think, honestly, I would be shocked if Vandy scores over 17 points in this game. You saw what they did to Ole Miss defensively, Kentucky. You saw what they did to Georgia defensively. I think Kentucky wins this game rather easily. Especially that big win you're coming off of, and then having to go to a team like Kentucky, who I believe had a bye week last week. So I'm going to say Kentucky big here. I'm going to say Kentucky 34-13, so about the same score, honestly, as the South Carolina game. So I'm taking Kentucky minus 13.5, and I would take the over barely here. All my overs and unders have been barely, but I'm going to take the over.
So, yeah, I think that the thing about Vanderbilt is when we look at all the teams in the preseason and you compare the rosters, and everybody thought, this is the worst team, it's Vanderbilt. That's still true. Their roster, their talent is still below everybody else. But it's kind of just the scheme. They've got that offense, that option. I don't even know what you call it, where they do all that stuff. And it's hard to prepare for. And if you don't focus in and you don't do your homework, you're going to, we saw what happened to Alabama. I think Alabama clearly overlooked this team. And you mentioned Kentucky had a bye week. I think that's really big. I think they'll be prepared. I think it's a lower scoring game. I do think Diego Pavia will make some plays. He'll keep Vanderbilt in this game. But I also like the progression from Brock Vandagriff. He's gotten better in recent games. They've gotten a little bit more aggressive on offense. I mean, go back to that Ole Miss game. They had to make some calls in that game, the fourth down. And so they've gotten more aggressive. They're trusting him a little bit more. So I think he'll make enough plays. But I think Vanderbilt keeps this game close. I'm going with 27-20 Kentucky. I think they win, but I think Vanderbilt's going to keep it pretty close. And I think this was the game. So, yeah, Tyler, he copied me here. He had the exact same score, 27-20 Kentucky in this one. So we're on the same page with that one. I do see the possibility of it going like you said, and Vanderbilt's just on this big high from beating Alabama. And, we see that all the time. But I think they've got enough playmakers. And, again, Diego Pavia it's almost like a poor man's Johnny Manziel. And, he does a lot of similar things. And he's got the swagger and all that. I think he'll keep them in this game. But again, if they don't come in really focused here, if they're still thinking about Alabama, yeah, I could see it being a blowout too.
Yeah, DeReal, actually, it's funny. You and Tyler have the same score. DeReal and I have the exact same score, 34-13. I just think they suffocate them. I really do. And if this was the NFL, I wouldn't be as big on they're coming off a big win. But these are kids, man, and they're just had the biggest win in their program's history. Literally the history of this program. That was the biggest win last Saturday. So I just think it's a huge hangover game. And I think Kentucky, like I said, is just a better version of what Vanderbilt is, honestly. And Kentucky's defense is really good. I know, DeReal, you're saying it's the best in the country. At worst, it's like the 10th best in the country. I mean, it's like a really good defense. You have an NFL guy at every level. So that's why I'm taking Kentucky in a blowout here. And I'm honestly kind of excited to watch this game. I don't think that's something I would have said at the beginning of the year, but I'm excited to watch this game when it does happen. But I'm more excited about this next game coming up. And you're going to be like, oh, it's the Texas game. Actually, I take that back. We'll get to that in a second. I'm not really that excited about this game, but it is going to be an interesting game. Obviously, great uniforms, great tradition here for Florida and Tennessee. Let's talk about the Florida Gators real quick. On offense, 26.5 points per game. That is 66th in the country. 6 yards per play on the offensive side of the ball, 39th in the country. 4.5 yards per rush, which is 55th in the country. And then 7.9 yards per pass, which is 40th in the country. And they only allow, their offensive line's been better than I thought. 4.31% of dropbacks and in a sack. That is 41st in the country. And this is the abysmal side of the ball. This is the side of the ball that hasn't been fixed in like a decade. 28.8 points per game allowed, 85th in the country. 5.9 yards per play, 86th in the country. 4.4 yards per rush, 76th in the country. 8.9 yards per pass, 117th in the country. Getting after the quarterback, they do have a sack percentage of 7.63%, which is 35th in the country, so not terrible, but overall not good at all for that defense. And then Tennessee, 40.3 points per game, 11th in the country. But I'm going to be straight up honest. versus real competition in Arkansas and Oklahoma, that has been nowhere near what they're scoring. So I take that with a grain of salt. 6.4 yards per play, 26th in the country. 5.5 yards per rush, 14th in the country, and 8.7 yards per pass, 21st in the country. Defensive side of the ball, they've still been very good this late in the season. 11 points per game, 5th in the country. 3.7 yards per play, 3rd in the country. 1.9 yards per rush, 1st in the country. 6.3 yards per pass, 31st in the country, and a sack percentage of 7.27%. That is 39th in the country. Chris, I'm going to let you start this one out.
Yeah, this is one that it's kind of hard to predict because Florida they always play well in this game. I don't know what it is. It just seems like they've got Tennessee's number. Tennessee, I think, is the better team, but I think Florida's improving. I think they're getting better. I think we've seen that. I was very surprised at what they did to UCF. I thought that was a game that would be close. I picked them to win, but I didn't really see them blowing them out in that game. You've got Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway both playing some at quarterback. Again, it's a Florida team that I think is improving. And for Tennessee, I think they're just not as good as we thought. I think we saw that against Arkansas. I don't think Nico's quite there yet. I don't think he's an elite quarterback like maybe some thought that he was after the first couple of weeks. And, I think maybe Florida in the red zone, they hold Tennessee to some field goals. I think it's a lower scoring game. It's a, rivalry. And so, yeah, I don't see Tennessee losing this game, especially at home, but I also don't see it being a blowout. I think it will stay pretty close. I'm going to go with 23-17. I think Tennessee wins, lower scoring game. I think Florida's defense will show up in this one, play one of their better games. And again, maybe hold Tennessee to some field goals, keep them out of the end zone, and they'll find a way to keep it close. But Tennessee, too much. Their defense, their defensive line, I think that's going to be the difference in this game. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with Tennessee 23, Florida 17. Looking at Tyler's pick, he's got Tennessee 31-17. That's his pick. 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, we're all pretty close again here. I have Florida losing this game 33-17. I just think Tennessee's defensive line is going to overwhelm Florida the whole game. That's what I think is going to happen. And I honestly think I think Graham Mertz is better than DJ Lagway at this point, but I think DJ Lagway might be the better quarterback for this game because he can get out of the pocket and escape that pass rush and make some plays with his legs. I also think this game will be closer for the first half than most people think because like you said, I don't think Nico's as good as most people think. I said, 3 weeks ago now that he isn't great, he's good. And then after watching Arkansas and Oklahoma, I don't even know if he's good right now. Like, he's struggled mightily. I talked about this on the Texas show last night. His completion percentage is like 59.5% versus those two teams. And he's only averaging 175 yards passing. So he's not doing anything special through the air right now. They do have a special ground game, and Florida's not good versus the rush. So I do think they'll be able to run up and down on this Florida defense. But like I said, honestly, I don't know what the first half line is here, but I'd probably take Florida in the first half. And then I think Tennessee just makes them tired in the second half and beats them up pretty easily in the second half. And I think they pull away in the end and they win this one 33-17. It's going to be very interesting. If Florida wins, here's a question. Would Florida beating Tennessee? Well, yeah, it definitely would. I don't even know why I'm asking this. Florida beating Tennessee would be a bigger upset than Arkansas beating Tennessee, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just had to
what
ask
was
that.
The
14 and a half.
The Arkansas. Oh, well, it was almost the same, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's on the road. Florida's at Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So maybe technically, I guess Vegas, because you gave the Arkansas 3 points. If they would have played Tennessee on the road, they would have been favored by less. That's kind of crazy to think about. But that's crazy. Also, Vegas has clearly adjusted their number here because I bet Florida last week probably would have been about a 20-point underdog. That would have been interesting to see what that line was. DeReal says, I can't trust Florida to do anything right. Yeah, that's fair. Billy Napier kind of has a shit show right now. Tony Montana laughing my ass off. SG1 is college football 25 in the background. Yeah, he has my team hopefully winning. I can't see the score if anyone wants to drop that in there.
It's 16-7 Texas right now.
Okay, yeah. If anyone wants to check out the simulations on the Texas and Oklahoma channel, Oklahoma beats Texas in the simulation. So my fellow brethren, Texas brethren, were not too happy about that, but could happen. This game's crazy. And actually, speaking of that game, we are going to get to that game next because I put it in the importance of basically the SEC, I guess, hierarchy. And I was nice to the SEC this week. I did put Ole Miss and LSU as more important. Maybe I shouldn't have. But Texas is favored by 14.5 points versus Oklahoma. The over-under here is set at 49.5. Texas, the number one team in the country. Let's get into them first. Texas is averaging 45 points per game. That is fifth in the country. They average 7.2 yards per play, which is ninth in the country. They convert on 51.67% of their third downs. That is seventh in the country. They average 5 yards per rush, which is the weakness of the team. That is 34th in the country. They average 10 yards per pass, which is ninth in the country. And they allow a sack rate of 3.01%. That is 25th in the country. And then, honestly, the side of the ball that doesn't get enough love for either of these teams is this Texas defense, in my opinion. They only allow 7 points per game, which is second in the country. 3.6 yards per play, which is second in the country. 27.78% of third downs are converted on this defense, which is 10th in the country. 3.2 yards per rush, which is 13th in the country. 4.5 yards per pass, that is number one in the country, and 8.16% sack rate, that is 26th in the country. Now let's get to Oklahoma. Oklahoma averages 28.6 points per game, 52nd in the country, 4.5 yards per play, 117th in the country, 3.7 yards per rush, which is 94th in the country, and then third down percentage on offense. I just read you the Texas defense on third down. Their percentage on offense for Oklahoma, 26.47%. That is 125th in the country. Yards per pass is 6 exactly, which is 113th in the country. And their offensive line, which is usually good, has not been this year. 9.03% sack rate. That is 111th in the country. Their defense has been pretty good. 16 points per game, 12th in the country. 4.5 yards per play, 19th in the country. 2.6 yards per rush, which is 8th in the country. 7.9 yards per pass, which is 83rd in the country. And 11.47% sack rate. That is 4th in the country. So both these defenses are very stout. I don't think Texas is getting enough love here. So this game is weird. Oklahoma's won 7 out of the last 10. They've won 17 out of the last 24. They have dominated this rivalry of recent. Texas obviously has the overall winning record here versus Oklahoma throughout their history. Texas should have won last year. They were the better team, but they turned the ball over 3 times. Oklahoma didn't turn over at all, and they still barely won the game. It took them a last-minute drive. I do not think that happens this year. I think there is a blueprint in this game, though, for Oklahoma. We've seen it in the Vanderbilt game. We've seen it in the Kentucky and Ole Miss game. Time of possession is key. I believe Vanderbilt had like 45 or 46 minutes of time of possession to 14 or 15. I think Kentucky had 38 to 22. If Oklahoma doesn't have 35 minutes of time of possession or more, they are not winning this football game. They have to play keep away from Texas. They are not going to score a lot of points in this game. They don't have a good enough rushing attack. Right now, this is a crazy stat. Jackson Arnold has not played in a game and a half. Jackson Arnold on the year is Oklahoma's second leading rusher in yards. That is how bad they are at running the football. They are not good at running the football. And they've struggled throwing the football mostly because they have no wide receivers to throw to. Deion Burks most likely is not going to play in this game. Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson obviously aren't going to play in this game. They are very limited on the outside. I think Texas is going to pull away in the third and fourth quarter here. I think it's close for a half. I think it's kind of what we thought Michigan was going to be, which is Texas will wear them down because their offense won't be able to move the ball. Their defense will get worn down. I think that's going to happen to Oklahoma. I have Texas covering this spread. I have us winning 37-21, and I'm taking the over as well. What do you have to say, SG1?
Well, let's start with 21. I don't see Oklahoma scoring 21 with their offense, but you do wonder with the bye week, the extra time to prepare. When we got Michael Hawkins in there at quarterback, they really didn't have a lot of time to get him ready for the Auburn game. He He had one long run in that game. He had one long pass, and he pretty much did nothing else. The offense did nothing. You talked about playing keep away. That's what Auburn did to Oklahoma. They ran the clock down, ran the football. Oklahoma didn't even have the ball a whole lot in that game. So yeah, I think Oklahoma's offense is really going to struggle in this game. Again, with the bye week, the extra time to prepare, maybe they come out with some kind of trick play, or their defense gets them a short field or something. Because I do like Oklahoma's defense. I think that they're underrated. I think this is talent-wise one of the best defenses in the country. And I think that defense is going to cause some problems for Texas. It's just a really tough one for me. The rivalry game, you never know what to expect. I think that it could be a low-scoring, close game, or if Texas gets up early and they get up by a couple of touchdowns and Oklahoma just can't get it going on offense, I could see this being a complete blowout. I mean, I could see Texas winning, by 30-plus points in this game. I'm going to lean more. I'm going to go conservative. I'm going to say that's a lower scoring game. I think Oklahoma's defense will keep them in it. Maybe they make a big play in the first half and get a touchdown somewhere to have a little bit of confidence, but I just don't see them sustaining drives. I don't see them being able to throw the ball, complete a third and long if they need it. I think that's going to be a big problem for them. So I think Texas wins this game. I'm going to go with 24-13. Low scoring game, but I'm going to go with Texas. And let's see what Tyler said about this one. He did pick Texas, a little more points, 34-20 Texas. That's his pick in this one.
Okay, so you would both take Oklahoma with the points there, but Tyler barely by half a point. And me and him would take the over. You would take the under there. I listen, this game's crazy. I could see so many different outcomes. I saw in 2015 a Texas team that went 5-7, beat a playoff team in Oklahoma. I saw Case McCoy beat Oklahoma when no one thought he would do that. I saw Oklahoma win last year when no one thought they'd win last year. So this game, like I said, it's crazy. They have dominated this rivalry the past 25 years, honestly. So it's going to be interesting. But I will say 9 out of the last 10 years, it has been a one-score game or less, so 8 points or less, which is crazy. There's not many rivalries you can point to that do that. And that's why this game is just so unpredictable. I think it's the second best rivalry in college football. I'm not even going to argue for number one because I'm from Ohio. I do agree. I think Ohio State and Michigan is number one, but I think Texas and Oklahoma is number two. I know you're shaking your head.
Hard goal on that one.
Caden the man 614. Hey fellas, hey, appreciate you being here. Tony says I didn't know SG1 was an Auburn fan. He's always hyping up Alabama. Is that true?
Nah. I've been accused of being an Alabama fan before. he knows I'm an Auburn fan though. It'd be awesome if I wasn't doing it like a Texas show. I was just doing college football. But I didn't have any Texas stuff up. If people could tell I was a Texas fan, because I made a video hating on, or not hating, but saying they had problems versus Mississippi State. I got so many comments from Texas fans saying I'm an idiot and they hate me. Because guess what? You got to call out your team sometimes if they're not performing up to the standard that they set. So, got to do that. Yep.
Got to keep honest. Next up, I think it's going to be the best game out of all the ones we talked about. It is Ole Miss at LSU. Ole Miss favored in this game. Surprised about that one. Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball, 37.6 points per game, 18th in the country, 7.6 yards per play, 5th in the country, 5.1 yards per rush, 29th in the country. And this is a crazy number. 11.2 yards per pass. That is 3rd in the country. A sack percentage allowed of 5.59%, 65th in the country. On the defense, and this has been not a surprise because I did think it was going to be good, but it's been better than I thought so far. 9 points per game, 3rd in the country. 3.8 yards per play, 4th in the country. Yards per rush, 1.9, 2nd in the country. Yards per pass, 6.1 allowed, 23rd in the country. And a sack percentage of 10.2%. That is 8th in the country on the defensive side of the ball. Now, LSU, 33 points per game, 31st in the country. 7 yards per play, 12th in the country. 5.2 yards per rush, which is better than I thought because their running back situation is not what up to LSU standards, honestly. 8.4 yards per pass, 25th in the country. And then This makes sense because their offensive line's great. 1.2% sack rate. That is third in the country. On the defensive side of the ball, I tried to tell SU fans it was unrealistic to expect this defense to get a lot better overnight. And they haven't gotten a lot better overnight. Have they gotten better? Yes, but they're still bad. 21.8 points per game, 37th in the country. 5.7 yards per play, 77th in the country. 3.7 yards per rush, 38th in the country. Yards per pass, 8.4, 106th in the country. Sack percentage, 10.87%, which is good, 5th in the country. And I don't understand their secondary. Your secondary must be abysmal if you're getting to the quarterback like that and you're allowing 8.4 yards per pass, which is 106th in the country. Yards passing per game also given up 258.8, which is 99th in the country. So I would say your run defense has definitely gotten better, but that secondary is still bad for LSU. Chris, what do you think about this game?
I think this is going to be a game where we see points. I think it's going to be I feel like all my predictions I've been kind of low on the scoring, but I think we're going to see more points in this game. Maybe not as many as last year. I can't remember what the score was last year, but I know it was back and forth. I'm also surprised.
I think it was like 50 to 48 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was no defense in that game. I think there's a little more defense in this one, but I do expect points. And I was also surprised that Ole Miss was favored, especially on the road. That one, yeah, I'm not understanding that one. We've seen the good and the bad from Ole Miss. We saw them against Kentucky not look so good. We saw them look pretty solid last week. LSU, have they started to find something with the run game? Maybe. Garrett Nussmeier is a guy you can trust at quarterback. You know, they've got their weapons on offense. And again, I think we're going to see points in this game. I think it's back and forth. I think it's kind of one of those games where it comes down to who has the ball last. I mean, that's the way I see this game playing out. We were talking about it. I'm not sure if Trey Harris is going to play in this game for Ole Miss. That's a big loss if he doesn't play. And again, you talked about LSU's offensive line. You know, Ole Miss, they've made some upgrades on their defensive line, but that's again an advantage for LSU. I think they're ready for that. And again, I think they'll be able to move the ball and score in this game. So I think it's back and forth. Whoever has the ball last kind of type game. I can't pick against LSU in Death Valley. I don't see them losing this game at home. I think they'll make enough plays. I'm going to go LSU 38-35 in a close one.
Yeah, I believe LSU's coming off a bye as well, so that helps out in this game a little bit. Lane Kiffin's going to have to prove it to me. This would be by far the best win he has on the road as a head coach. I don't think there's anything else that would come close to this. So I'm going to go with LSU until he proves me wrong. I'm going to take LSU to win this game 31-26. So I would take the under here. I think that's a little bit high. And I think, honestly, Vegas said it like that because of last year's game. But I'm taking LSU. I completely agree. I don't understand why Ole Miss is favored, especially if Trey Harris is hurt. If Trey Harris is hurt, if people don't remember, and yes, Kentucky has a better defense than LSU by a lot. But he was the only one that did anything in that game versus LSU. They had trouble. Everyone else had trouble. So if he's out, someone else is going to have to step up, whether that be the tight end or Juice Wells at the wide receiver position, or if they just want to run the ball a little bit more with Bentley and those guys in the backfield. Whatever it may be, someone's going to have to step up. And that matchup is going to be very intriguing. The LSU offensive line versus the Ole Miss revamped defensive line. Walter Nolan and those guys have been playing really well. They're getting 4 to 5 sacks almost every week at this point. They did it versus South Carolina, which, again, bad offensive line. They did it versus Kentucky, which not a great offensive line. But they're doing it now versus a really good offensive line. So if they prove that to me, guys, where they can do that versus a great offensive line like LSU, then they're going to be able to do it through almost any game this year. So it's going to be very interesting how that works and how that turns out.
Yeah, you mentioned this being a big win for Lane Kiffin. Last year's regular season win over LSU, that might have been his biggest win at that time, you know, just that you bring that up. Yeah, getting one on the road would be huge. I did forget to give Tyler's pick, and he does not have LSU in this game. He actually did go with Ole Miss. So he's going 30-24 Ole Miss. So he is different than us on that one. I think every other game, all three of us are agreed, at least on the winner. But yeah, he's going with Ole Miss on that one.
Yeah, we agreed on the winner, and I think we've agreed on like every spread other than the I think it was the Texas and Oklahoma
Texas.
game. I'm a little bit higher on my team, which makes sense. I'm probably a little bit biased there. But yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch. Just a phenomenal day of college football, honestly. It might be the best day of the whole year. I mean, you have Ohio State, Oregon, you have Texas, Oklahoma, you have Ole Miss, LSU. No one even talks about this game. Like, I still think it's going to be a good game. Penn State and USC is a sneaky good game. I mean, that's crazy to say that that's a sneaky good game when that's like the 5th or 6th game of the weekend people are talking about. I'm sure there's a bunch of other games I'm forgetting, but this is going to be an awesome, awesome weekend. Chris, thank you again for stepping in for Tyler. It's been a lot of fun breaking down, previewing these games with you. Guys, go give him a follow. If you don't know who he is, go over to SG1 Sports on YouTube, like and subscribe over there. Please like and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football SEC channel. That is my Twitter. You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. It's up to you, but that is my username and handle. And again, guys, it is Amazon Prime Day coming up, so use that Amazon link in the description. Put a little bit of change in Mark's pocket. And if you don't want to look at us, but you want to listen to us, catch us on your favorite audio platform, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Prime, whatever it may be. Go over there, check us out. SEC channel, Texas channel, Oklahoma channel, USC channel, whatever you're a fan of, whatever your flavor is, go over there and check it out. You'll probably be able to find it. Let's jump into these comments real quick before we jump off. Kentucky Vandy will be the funniest game. Kentucky always lose after a bye. Yeah, man, if Kentucky loses to Vanderbilt, we could be talking about Vanderbilt being possibly like a 7 or 8 win team, which is pretty crazy if you would have said that at the beginning of the year.
And especially after losing to Georgia State. I mean, the team that lost to Georgia State beat Alabama. That's why I talk about the talent is not there. They've got to out-scheme you. And, that kind of shows up in a game like Georgia State, where they probably don't have a big advantage even against them. And they were prepared, I guess. I didn't watch that game, so I don't really have anything to say about it. But
no, I didn't watch it either. But I think an underrated part of Vanderbilt is Jerry Kill, the New Mexico State head coach from last year's on the staff. And if anyone, just go looking at that guy. That guy is a very good head football coach wherever he's been, and now he's an assistant at Vanderbilt. He brought over Diego Pavia. That's why Diego Pavia is there. And those two together obviously working their magic, taking it from New Mexico State now to Vanderbilt. And Jerry Kill, like I said, he was good at Minnesota too. So that was really the last time before PJ Fleck they were good. So really, he's just a really good football coach. He keeps retiring because of health, but coming back. So maybe a little bit of Urban Meyer syndrome there. I don't know what kind of skeletons he's got in the closet, but it's been weird. Every time he retires, he's like, oh, it's my health. But then he comes back in like 2 years. So I don't know. But that has been the 4th edition, guys. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Thank you again, SG1.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep. See you guys.